What's up, people? I'm Shaggy the Opinionated Hippie, and this is part 3 of my reviewing and ranking Jethro Tull studio albums, the 1970s. They put out 10 albums, 10 studio albums in the 70s. One a year, like literally, I think every year they dropped an album. Plus they had 2 greatest hits albums. They had the compilation slash, it wasn't really a greatest hits because they had like B-sides and singles and stuff like that album. They had a live album. Like they had a productive decade. And the amazing thing is like none of these albums are bad. All 10 of these albums are solid albums. A tier and above. I would argue 7 of them are like S tier albums. Just absolutely brilliant. The ones at the back of the list, pretty much the only ones that ever got any sort of like negative press. I guess a lot of these got negative press. But the ones that kind of it held on to a little bit longer, it seemed, were the poppier ones, the ones that were less proggy, which is interesting because if I understand this correctly, like Jethro Tull like doubled, tripled, quadrupled down on progginess with Thick as a Brick because Ian Anderson was surprised that Jethro Tull kept being like sort of cataloged or categorized or grouped in with the prog bands of the day, and he didn't think they were necessarily a prog band. And then he was like, well, if you want us to be a prog band, boom, and then dropped one of the greatest prog albums of all time. But then interesting, when they got away from that, it was like, what are you doing? Even though Jethro Tull is just Jethro Tull. Like, I don't know, man. Their sound is flute and Ian Anderson's voice and some of the tastiest guitar playing ever. Yeah, one more thing before we get to the albums. Martin Barre, the guitar player. I'm assuming you say his name Barre. He is like, he is like if you work in a restaurant. I don't work in a restaurant, but I'm assuming I'm imagining maybe there's a guy, let's pretend, there's a guy who makes the sauces, right? He's the sauce guy. And you don't need him for every dish because not every dish needs like a really good sauce. But when it comes to Martin Barre and his role as an electric guitar player, he's like the sauce guy. And every once in a while, Ian Anderson is like, this dish needs a really good sauce. And Martin Barre, who must just be the coolest guy in the world, is like, oh yeah, I'm ready. Yeah, just whatever. I'll create the greatest sauce ever. And that sauce is usually like an awesome guitar riff or like some just like a solo or just some weird proggy heavy electric stuff. Like he is not, there is not a lot of electric guitar like running through like every minute of these songs, but every time Barre shows up with that electric guitar, it is just like some of the most delicious music ever. And I want to give mad props to Barre because so many of these things, it's like he'll disappear for a song or two and you're like, where's Barre? Like, I know he plays other instruments, but that electric guitar presence is not there. And then as soon as he comes in, you're just like, yeah. Oh, that's exactly what we needed when we needed it. That was perfect. So mad love to Barre. Mad love to all 10 of these albums. Let's just go through them. Yeah, 10 to 1, post the list when we're done, all that kind of stuff. So let's do it. Jethro Tull, the 70s. Number 10 is 1974's War Child. This is their 7th studio album. This is the one that followed their 2 sort of epic prog releases, Thick as a Brick and Passion Play. Albums in which, even though the re-releases have sort of indexed the songs and broken them up into parts, at the time when they were released and for decades, even the early CD releases, it was side 1 was Thick as a Brick 1, side 2 was Thick as a Brick 2, Passion Play 1, Passion Play 2, right? So they were the most epic prog things one could do as a prog band. And they followed those up with this, which is like a more streamlined, the longest song on here is 5.5 minutes, maybe the best song on here, ironically enough. They try to get away from the long things, and the best thing on here to these years is probably the longest song on here. Kind of reminds me of sort of Jethro Tull's version of Roxy Music's like art rock, that kind of thing. Way too much instrumentation going on at times. It just seems like there's a lot of production decisions. I think there's some strings on here. There's just a lot going on instrument-wise, and it just seems like the sonic field is just too chaotic at times. But there's some good tracks. It's not bad. In the middle of the album particularly, there's 10 songs, but like the 4, 5, 6, and 7, the last 2 songs inside A, the first 2 songs inside B, I think are like the heart of the album, and everything else is pretty good. And that heart is Backdoor Angels, the longest track on here, has two really nice sort of jam pockets in it, like just moments where the band is just kind of jamming and stretching out and getting loose. Really nice guitar riff in here. Yeah, it's a really good, loose, one of the jammier songs on here. That's followed by Sea Lion, which just has some really good, just really good upbeat energy, some great bass playing. After that, you get the two hits, the two singles, Skating Away on the Thin Ice of a New Day, which is kind of a nice little breezy, folky pop number, and Bungle in the Jungle, which is the most pop thing on here. But it's a fun song, even cartoonish jungle noises in the beginning and stuff. Everything else on here is pretty good. You get some like a nice acoustic solo piece and Only Solitaire. It's Only Solitaire. What else do you get? The third Hurrah. Hurrah starts off with a hurrah. Some of the synths on here, including that song, The Third Hurrah, have some sort of electric, Disneyland electric parade vibes. Some of the synth sounds have not aged the best. But other than that, you get some upbeat songs. You get some sort of their version of art rock. Lots of flute, lots of good energy. One of my favorite songs by them came from these sessions, and you can get it in like post-release, not the original release, but the CD releases. Rainbow Blues, which is an awesome song with some awesome guitar playing, nice poppy, kind of a hook, could have been a radio hit. But it's not a bad album in any way, but it is the number 10 of the 70s, War Child. Number 9 is 1979's Stormwatch, their 12th, the last one of the decade. Kind of generally regarded as the third in sort of their folk rock trio of Songs from the Wood, Heavy Horses, and then this. Interesting format to this album. The original vinyl, 2 sides, 10 songs, 5 songs on each side. And it was, you got 3 kind of folk rocky songs to kick off each side. Then you got like sort of a little mini epic. On side, the first half, it was Dark Ages, like a 9-minute song, probably the highlight of the album. On the second side, it was Flying Dutchman, close to 8 minutes, probably the highlight of that side of the album. And then following those was an instrumental. I think there might be like some background in the second one, Elegy, but they're instrumental tracks essentially that do a really good job of sort of contrasting or providing some sort of relief to like the 8-minute epic that preceded it. And the songs are good. It's just really solid folk rock with lots of proggy elements. Like at no point, I think every one of these, like no matter how like normal you think it's going to be, at some point little just prog weirdness drops in. You're like, okay, Jethro Tull, it's great. Lots of flute, lots of Ian Anderson. Opens up with North Sea Oil, which is a really nice opener, nice upbeat, streamlined, moving folk rock. Orion is a little more dynamic with sort of a loud, quiet rock energy. Home, acoustic, gentler. I think we even got some strings in the background. But then you get Dark Ages, which is just an epic, epic song. Like different feels. Starts off with a very atmospheric kind of setting a vibe. About 2.5 minutes into it, you get some really nice guitar in there. A lot of really rock energy. You got a long sort of instrumental section with all kinds of proggy diversions all over the place, and that sort of very almost Zappa-esque Jethro Tull way of doing their prog, where you just never know when an odd beat or an odd rhythm or a burst of something is going to go at any point in time, like awesomely unpredictable. But we get a lot of that in the middle of this Dark Ages song, these really cool passages. And then the song that follows it is this sort of like late 70s sort of punky, dancey, instrumental thing that's absolutely wonderful. Contrast very nicely with the vibe of Dark Ages. The second half of this opens up with Something's on the Move, kind of a rocker with like riff energy. Got some good riff energy going there. Old Ghosts is more folk rock. Really good, awesome bass and drums in this. The rhythm section is awesome. Dun Ring Hill is sort of a nice acoustic, nice breath of fresh air in the middle of the art rock craziness that's kind of going on in here, the folk rock craziness. And then Flying Dutchman is sort of the centerpiece, I think, of side 2. got it like nice piano intro with some flute coming in there. Then we get that like big energy that comes in, and we have that sort of quiet, loud dynamic that Jethro Tull plays with very, very well in their longer pieces. Like, you know, providing you breathing room for the more intense proggy stuff, the more intense electric stuff. And they do that with Flying Dutchman, definitely one of the two epics on here. And then it closes out with a nice little instrumental. But yeah, Elegy. But yeah, really solid album, really consistent album. I think maybe it's a little less ambitious than some of the stuff earlier in the decade, and drops to number 9 only because like the first 3 tracks on each side are just really, really solid folk rock, but I don't think anything that's truly that like epic or memorable, which you get on some of the other albums. But yeah, a number 9, but a really, really solid number 9, Stormwatch. Number 8 is Too Old to Rock and Roll, Too Young to Die. Came out in 1976. Apparently it's a concept album about an aging rocker some people might think he's too old to rock and roll, but he's not, and he's also not too young to die. Apparently it deals with that, but it doesn't matter whether it does or not, because the songs are all absolutely fantastic. 10 songs, pretty straightforward album. There's nothing past 6 minutes on here. The longest is like 5:44. So we're kind of stepping back from the progginess, but there's little elements of prog in each of the songs. It's almost like a breather between just like War Child was a breather after their 2 epic prog things. You know, then they kind of went back to had some longer prog songs in the next 2 albums. And then after this, they're going in like a folky prog rock direction. So this is sort of like a more mainstream, straightforward, simpler time, but it's absolutely fantastic. And the songs are ridiculous. Opens up with Quiz Kid, opens up with the same melody as Too Old to Rock and Roll, Too Young to Die, and like a sort of a mutated version of that before it goes into this awesome guitar-driven rocker that's absolutely fantastic. Solid opener. Crazed Institution, nice upbeat acoustic energy. Salamander, really nice, little sparse, acoustic little nugget, just really cool, really just kind of light and airy and refreshing and just a fun little song. Taxi Grab, awesome electric guitar on here, heavier vibe, kind of funky. It's literally, I think, just about being on the London streets or on the streets of some city and trying to grab a taxi. Just really playful, really cool energy, really kind of a neat song from them. Then you have From a Deadbeat to an Old Greaser, leading into the sort of title or the concept of the album. This is a pretty calm energy throughout most of this song, kind of super chill, kind of a song of resignation, it kind of feels like. Bad-Eyed and Loveless opens up side 2, another very sparse acoustic song that has the unfortunate lyric that she's a warm fart at Christmas. So, yeah. But the way he sings it, he's like, but she's a warm fart at Christmas, like completely disguises the word fart. Big Dipper, awesome song, really rock, upbeat, nice, really good bouncy energy. Goes really well after the sort of little lull, not maybe an acoustic lull that kind of happens in the middle of the album. This is a good bounce back from that. We get the title track, which is this fun, quirky, weird little number. That riff is absolutely awesome. And the way he plays that riff, it's like whatever that repeating riff is, the last note always has this weird like bend or distortion to just make it feel a little just like a little uneasy and a little like, not as little, there's something in that last note every time Barr plays it. Absolutely fantastic. Pied Piper, awesome, bouncy, upbeat, acoustic number, really fun. And then the Checkered Flag, kind of a ballad, kind of a quiet to like bigger ballad style type things. There's a couple songs on the recent CD, A Small Cigar and Strip Cartoon. Strip Cartoon is really a cool song. And if it's on, it's a good addition as most of the songs are, but they aren't on the original version. But yeah, it's a solid album. Really good listen, maybe less ambitious than everything that's going to precede it on this list. But I don't think there's really a bad song or a bad moment. There's actually a couple really good highlights and some really fun things. So yeah, my number 8, Too Old to Rock and Roll, Too Young to Die. Number 7 is Minstrel in the Gallery. This came out in 1975, their 8th. We're at that part of this list where all the rest of these albums are pretty much S tier, S minus maybe, S, some S plus. They're all absolutely fantastic albums. This is one of those fantastic albums. After War Child, they came back, dropped some a little more proggy elements in here, a little more like messing with longer song forms, a lot of sort of connections to what Aqualung did, in which we had like a lot of acoustic stuff leaning into the heavy electric stuff in the same song. The opening, Minstrel in the Gallery, exactly that. Nice acoustic intro, and then Martin Barre shows up with some of the most delicious sauces, just drops like riff after riff and grooves and all this absolutely awesome, amazing stuff. My favorite song on here, Cold Wind of Valhalla, isn't quite as heavy as that, but there's little moments where Barre is just like, the whole band is kind of stepping up and providing a little bit of oomph. And the way Anderson sings this in particular with the Valhalla reminds me of a lot of what Colin would do decades later in the Decemberists. There's a Decemberist vibe. Somebody in that band must have been a fan of this song, because there seems to be a connection there. Black Satin Dancer, just guitar heavy, awesome. Starts off acoustic, think it's going to be one thing. Next thing you know, Barre shows up and we're just off in like guitar heaven. Yeah, Minstrel in the Gallery is like 8+ minutes. Black Satin Dancer is close to 7 minutes. Like, they're stretching out again. They're really like, they're having fun. They're loosening up. Requiem closes side A with a softer, more gentler song. Side 2 opens up with One White Duck over 0 to the 10th power equals nothing at all. One of my least favorite acoustic numbers of him, the One White Duck, I've never really gotten into. It's a nice, good opener to side B, but it's, to me, one of their more underwhelming, lighter numbers. But then we get Baker Street Muse. Nice, nearly 17-minute song. They're back to like the really long prog stuff. The album very much sort of balances, like, you have, I think, the opening song, or the opening part of the song, Baker Street Muse, is one of the more interesting parts on here. Kind of starts off acoustic, and by the end of it, we're having a lot more energy. The band's into it. It's becoming a more prog rock piece. And then there's 3 other songs or parts of this. Pygmy and the Whore, Pig-Me and the Whore. Nice little tune, Crash Burial Waltzer. It's a little more acoustic and a little more down, a little more solemn. And then we get the end, Mother England Reverie, where the band comes back. We get this nice, like, thumping, plodding groove, some really good guitar energy. But yeah, it's a very, it's not, I don't think it's their most successful of the, like, it's 17 minutes long, so it's essentially a side-long piece. I think it's ambitious, and there's really great parts on it, but I don't think every part really holds together as well as some of their other more 17, 20+ minute prog pieces. But still a good little piece. And then we get 37 seconds of something called Grace at the end. But yeah, solid, great album. Some absolutely fantastic songs. Side A is a beast. I think side B, a little more ambitious, but not quite as beastly, but there are really, really good moments on it. Still a really solid listen. And yeah, that would be my number 7, Minstrel in the Gallery. My number 6 is Aqualung, their 4th album that came out in 1971. 1971, that's crazy. Yeah, fantastic album. For me, I have it at 6 because, one, I don't think it's sequenced very well. I never thought the first side was laid out in the right way. I didn't think Aqualung should have been an opening song. Like, with their like little short like instrumentals or the short acoustic stuff that they drop, like, I thought like having something like that open this album, and then the second song is like dun 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 dun. You're like, oh yeah, all right, bring us in, boys, bring us in. And so I never really liked the sequencing. So that, and also I've never been the biggest fan of the song Aqualung. From my earliest days as a child, it wasn't until I heard other Grateful Dead songs, other Jethro Tull songs, that I started to be like, okay, this is a band I want to check out. It wasn't Aqualung. Don't know why. I love the riff. I like the song. It's a good song, but it wasn't one of those that grabbed me. However, it is a great song, and I acknowledge that. Cross-Eyed Mary, the song that's second on this album, is one of the nastiest sounding songs ever. Man, during there's, I guess it's the verses, that just those organ sounds in the background are so meaty and so beefy and so absolutely just, who is on organ? John Evan is just like absolutely killing it. That sound is just one of the greatest sounds in all of rock music and all music, is that just the background of Cross-Eyed Mary. These sounds are fantastic. Cheap Day Return, nice, short, gentler acoustic ballad. Mother Goose, like a strolling, more acoustic vibe. Jaunty, other instruments kind of coming in when needed. Doesn't get too heavy, but I think there's a little bit of electric guitar thrown in there for vibe. Wandering Aloud, another gentle acoustic. Up to Me, acoustic, but it's got a nice, cool, heavy groove to it, so it's got a little more weight to it, a little more heft to it. But I always thought this was an unbalanced side of music. I just, starting off with these two absolutely ferocious, more electric things, and then kind of staying away for that for the rest of the side, I kind of always thought hurt the flow of the album. Then you get the epic My God kick off the second side of the album, which is just absolutely fantastic. Absolutely just this awesome, dark, moody acoustic part that drops into an absolutely amazing electric guitar part. You get that sort of flute breakdown in the middle that's absolutely fantastic. Yeah, more guitar playing at the end. Yeah, just really a little mini epic at 7 minutes. Better than Aqualung, I would say. Just not a radio-friendly song because of that quiet beginning. Hymn 43, another one of those just rock songs that just sounds so huge and so incredible. Like, just the sounds that this band is getting when they're just straight out rocking is just fantastic. We get Slipstream, which provides us a little bit of a little acoustic break before Locomotive Breath drops. Another absolutely just ridiculous beast of a song. And then Wind Up closes out with more of like an acoustic quiet into loud, into like sort of a inverse of Aqualung maybe, right? Instead of having the acoustic stuff all in the middle. But nice heavy groove, really good, strong, dynamic closer. Great guitar energy and Wind Up. This is a great album, like no problems with this album. Songs are fantastic. I just put it at number 6 because I do think the album experience, the sequencing of the album is not ideal. I don't know what I would do to change it, but I think it could be done better. That's all. That's my complaint. Otherwise, pretty fantastic. At number 6, Aqualung. Number 5 is Heavy Horses, which came out in 1978. Their 11th, the second in their sort of so-called folk rock trilogy with lots of prog elements thrown in there and some great Martin Barr guitar when needed. Yeah, just 9 just perfectly sequenced, really good songs. First 2 songs on side A, and The Mouse Police Never Sleeps and Acres Wild are just pretty kind of straightforward folk rock. And The Mouse is maybe a little quirkier, a little more proggy, has this weird little ending thing that they do with the vocals, almost like a Fish, YEM type playing with the words. Acres Wild, a little more upbeat and driven, really good folk rock. But those don't even prepare you for the absolute beast that is No Lullaby. No Lullaby has this absolutely awesome bass doo-doo part that almost is a really shortened version of King Crimson's Indiscipline, and where you get the bass just doing this doo-doo after some awesome Martin Barr guitar brings us there. This doo-doo, and then you get like almost a drum solo over it, a la Indiscipline from King Crimson. The beginning of that. Almost 8-minute song, some incredible guitar playing throughout these things. It's just an awesome epic in the middle of this first side of this album. There would be another awesome epic on the second side of the album. These epics are epic. Moth follows that. Moths follow that. And Moth says is really just like really upbeat, drive-in acoustic energy that just makes you feel good, that complements sort of the darker energy of No Lullaby perfectly. Journeyman, amazing bass. Bass player steps up, is dropping ridiculous bass lines that just drive this entire song. Who's on bass right here? We got John Glasscock on bass. Absolutely fantastic bass. Journeyman, fantastic song. The side two, or the second half of the album, you get two more acoustic-y folk stuff, more in line with sort of the label of this album, Rover and One Brown Mouse, which are good songs. And then you get the title track, which starts off with one of my favorite Martin Barre guitar riffs in the beginning. This just kind of, he comes up with these weird, but sound like British, I don't know. There's something about his licks that just sound like nobody else. And the one that opens up this is just amazing. And you get one of those awesome 8+ minute Jethro Tull prog classics with like flute and guitar and weird proggy sections and drop downs so we can hear the lyrics, and then things get crazy again. And Martin Barre's dropping all the delicious sauces all over the place with his electric guitar. Absolutely fantastic. And then we get a nicely sort of full acoustic song that kind of slowly builds in energy called Weathercock to close out the album. Yeah, man, it is a fantastic album. It's just, it's ambitious, it's fun, it's got art rockiness in it, it's got folk rock, it's got the necessary prog elements, Martin Barre's dropping the bars on guitars, two epic songs in No Lullaby and Heavy Horses. Yeah, this is a really good album. Yeah. 95, not 95, my number 5 out of the 70s, Heavy Horses. Number 4 is their third album, 1970s Benefit. To describe this album best, it seems like two things happened, and I don't know if they did. I've never read a Jethro Tull book, so I don't know. But two things I think happened is Martin Barre, maybe three things. One, Martin Barre was like, hey, man, showed Ian Anderson, I got all these riffs, man, and these licks that need songs. Like, listen to this. Listen to this one. It's longer. Takes them. Listen to this. I got all this stuff. Can you do stuff with that? And then Anderson was like, yeah, I'm going to write a whole bunch of songs with these riffs. And those two things happen. And then they're like, hey, let's have the band just learn all the songs and let's go into the studio and bang these things out as a band and just have a good time playing music. That's what this album feels like. Doesn't feel like it has the burden of massive statements like the following album, Aqualung. It's definitely got a little more cohesion than some of their first album. Their previous album, Stand Up, was fantastic. But it just feels not less ambitious like maybe War Child or Too Old to Rock and Roll, but more just like straightforward and simple, and let's just really play some really good sort of rock with blues elements, a little bit of prog. We got our flute, we got a little folk energy. We do that acoustic thing that we do really well. It's a banger from start to finish. With You There to Help Me might be one of my favorite songs of theirs ever. It starts off with this little beat that's just like da-da-da-dun-da-da, that they're just kind of playing on acoustic guitar. And as the verse goes on, the first verse is just right there. Like you cycle through it. Da-da-da-dun-da-da. But then like after like the fifth or sixth time, all of a sudden Barre steps up and it's like da-da-da-dun-da-da. And we're just like off. Absolutely fantastic. Nothing to Say, great rock energy. Sun, a whole great rock song. To Cry You a Song, this awesome opening riff that just kind of sneaks up on you and takes over. A Time for Everything. Inside, You Want to Be on the Inside. Playing Time, another heavy rocker. Got some acoustic stuff for Michael Collins' Jeffrey and Me. Saucity, Your Woman. Inside. I think on the US release, Inside was not on there, or one of the releases, and Teacher was. Teacher is from this recording session, and that's a pretty good song. But Inside, I think is a better song. Teacher was a radio hit in LA, or we heard it a lot in LA, but Inside is fantastic. Yeah, this is just, I think they sound like a really, really good band here, playing relatively straightforward songs, but you still have Anderson's voice, you still have the flute, you still have that acoustic element, and you have Martin Barre just bringing the riffs and bringing the licks and just bringing the guitar energy, the sort of as close to straight rock and roll energy that we're going to get. But yeah, fantastic, fantastic album. My 4, their 3, Benefit. Number 3 is a passion play. This came out in 1973. 1973, it was their 6th. This is one of those in which, when it was originally released, it was side A was Passion Play 1, side B was Passion Play Part 2. In recent times, I think the releases, as they've been remastered, have indexed the tracks within the songs within them, so you get the different parts and they have actual names to the songs. This album, and the 2 songs on this album, the 2 songs, side A and side B, remind me kind of like of Genesis's Supper's Ready, in which you have these identifiable parts, which I think would qualify as songs. And between these longer songs, you have these instrumental passages that might have, like in Genesis's case, a Tony Banks piano solo or keyboard solo, or like a Peter Gabriel flute solo. And so you had these moments that were sort of connectors between the larger things. And that's kind of what this feels like. It feels like there's a lot of instrumentals here that were built to like get us from this song that we had written to this song that we had written. And they all work and they sound great and they help vary the musical landscape in really refreshing ways. But that seems to be the approach. It's the way it kind of feels. And so while each side is definitely one single song, you do get a sense that you're traveling from like different part to different part. It's almost like a Quentin Tarantino action movie in which you, like Pulp Fiction. Like there are certain scenes that you know are like just, the Mia Wallace, spoiler alerts, the Mia Wallace OD scene, the Marvin in the face scene, the Gimp scene, right? And you have connective tissue to get you those that are necessary, but those aren't the things you want to go back and rewatch. I want to go back and re-listen to the whole thing here, but it feels like we have these connective tissues. And unlike Thick as a Brick, in which they sort of like walked you into the sidelong piece with that like acoustic, hey man, just me on an acoustic guitar, Ian Anderson. This one starts off with like very much like an instrumental, like sort of like prelude, like an overture before like things kind of calm down and we get like more songs, we get acoustic, we get Ian Anderson's voice. Side A does that. You have your overture, then you get this kind of songs part. You get this crazy saxophone jazz solo in the middle. You get 2 of their greatest songs back to back, now that we're breaking out songs. Best Friends, which drops about 13 minutes into it, which is immediately followed by Critique Oblique. Just monster songs. Great energy, great grooves. All of your best friends, just great rockers. Fantastic. Then side B opens up. So side A, it's like 20 minutes, 23 minutes, just all over the place, proggy stuff. Side B opens up with something called The Story of the Hare Who Lost His Spectacles. It is the most overly enunciated story ever, and it is absolutely fantastic. The guy who is telling the story like enunciates every syllable and every letter perfectly. Great story. It's kind of like a Shaggy Dog story. It's about a hare who lost his spectacles, and there's like half the cast from Winnie the Pooh, though they're not the Winnie the Pooh characters. Owl's there. Kangaroo is there. The hare's there. I think you got a bee and a newt is there. Yeah, I think it's a newt. And they're all going on and on about how the hare has lost his spectacles and what are they going to do. But in the end, it doesn't matter because the hare doesn't care because he has a spare pair. And then we go off into this awesome, soft, synth, comforting, I think it's called Forest Dance. Just this awesome little like musical interlude after the story that ushers us back into the craziness that is Passion Play, the prog monster. This part has two amazing parts in it. Oversea Overture, which is absolutely fantastic, and Flight from Lucifer. These happen around the 10-minute mark on. Two absolutely awesome songs in the middle of this one long song. But yeah, a fantastic ride. Yeah, just prog silliness at its best. Some great hooks, great playing by the entire band. Nice little story in the middle that makes things a little crazy and weirdy and undeniably prog. Yeah, man, good album. My number 3, A Passion Play. Number 2, their 10th 1977 Songs from the Wood Make You Feel Much Better. The first in their trilogy of folk rock albums, and according to my ears, by far the best. There are days when I would rank this as number 1. It is 1B. This is such an incredibly fantastic album. And I really think like the opening song alone, one of the greatest things they've ever done. This is Jethro Tull. Like, I imagine this is like some like carnival show, right? Like a traveling sort of, not a circus, but a traveling sort of minstrel show, to go back to Minstrel in the Gallery. And like Jethro Tull, Ian Anderson comes out with other members of the band, and they sing Songs from the Wood, which starts off with just a cappella, and then just acoustic instruments enter. And like, you're like, yeah, let me sing you Songs from the Wood. Come in, join us. And then they open up the curtain and you join them. And behind the scenes is some of the craziest, weirdest, most electric, just dizzy, head-scratching, dizzy, amazing prog music ever. And the journey that they go on that song alone, dropping some more like, let me sing you Songs from the Wood in the middle of all the prog craziness, returning the prog craziness. It is an absolutely perfect roller coaster ride of folk prog rock music, the opening track. And the rest of the album just kind of follows in that path in the best way possible. Jack in the Green, you got some big dramatic moments, but stays kind of chilled, mostly acoustic, mostly like nice, good folk energy. Cup of Wonder, more rock, got a nice instrumental section in there with some like really proggy folk ideas in there. Hunting Girl, nice, great proggy intro, and with you have an organ and flute and guitar all kind of playing around with each other, passing the theme from like 1 to 1 to 1 as they kind of set up the song. Really nice, sick bass-driven groove in this song. Hunting Girl, just 5+ minutes of just great proggy Jethro Tull like exploration. Ring Out Solstice Bells, feels like Christmas. And I do believe this was on their Christmas album, so it's got a winter vibe to it. Velvet Green has a very stately, proper, grand kind of folk vibe. Like, I don't know what the Velvet Green is, but it's something that I think it feels majestic, and it feels something like I should respect based on the music. Nice proggy detours throughout this song that are pretty good. The Whistler kind of has this urgent, darker vibe, but then we get this like really almost Irish jig type pace towards the end, in which Ian Anderson keeps saying, "Come on, I'm the Whistler." And I feel like that should have been the opening song to like every show they played, is like, "Come on, I'm the Whistler," like the intro. And then from there on out, you're just following Ian wherever he wants to go. Yeah, just great song. And then we get, and I'm sure I'm mispronouncing this, Pibroch, Cap in Hand, in which Martin Barre loses his mind on guitar and just absolutely shreds in that just indescribable Martin Barre way. He is making that guitar scream. Really dramatic proggy energy in this. You got some nice bass, heavy, slow walking parts in this. Of course, you got the acoustic guitar popping up throughout the whole thing. Your typical 8.5 minute Jethro Tull proggy thing with all these interchangeable parts. But Martin Barre, the guitar, just screaming in this song. Absolutely fantastic. Like, we have entered the tent of Songs from the Wood, and we are in like the very back, darkest, deepest corner at this point, and we need to get out. Like, things are getting intense. And then Fire at Midnight, really good ending song, kind of a chill, little mellower track, but the whole band's there, kind of builds, gets a little chaotic towards the end of it. But yeah, it's only like 2.5 minutes long. But yeah, really good ending track, a good sort of like come down, but not too quickly, because that's also dangerous, the opposite of going up. Fire at Midnight to close out. It's a perfect album, man. This is a perfect album. It is folk rock, proggy, Jethro Tullness at its peak, at its purest, at its best. Absolutely great album. But they have a better one? That's my number 2. My number 1 is And my number one is Thick as a Brick. Their fifth, came out in 72. This was their prog album, which was intended to be sort of like mocking prog, or, you know, a parody of prog or a satire of prog. But as Ween will tell you, and Community, the TV show, and anything, if you're going to mock something or do a parody of it, you do it better than the original, because then it becomes part of the canon of that music. And yeah, Thick as a Brick, absolutely fantastic. It was originally, side A was Thick as a Brick Part 1, side B was Thick as a Brick Part 2. Since then, we've gotten title names and things have been indexed properly. And in the middle of the first side of this, the first side is essentially like 3 or 4 different songs, maybe 5 different songs. But there is a song in the middle of this, a track now called The Poet and the Painter, which is about 5.5 minutes long. It could be its own song. You could drop that on a greatest hits album. It would feel like its own self-contained song. It is fantastic. Kind of straightforward, like nice instrumental intro. We get these great lyrics, The Poet and the Painter. Great performance by Ian Anderson. Then we get like a true like jam session in the middle. Like guitar and flute and the band just kind of letting loose for like 1.5, 2 minutes. Absolutely fantastic. Just a really neat little island of rather straightforward rock and roll, slightly proggy, in the middle of this really chaotic, acoustic, all over the place, changes like crazy prog album. One of my favorite moments of all time, the 4-minute and 22-second mark. There's about 2 seconds of music, which feels like they're going to slide into like some other like groove, and they just abandon it and go back into like the weird proggy stuff. Just exhilarating. Yeah, but just a really fantastic album. You get like the opening that everybody knows of, the acoustic opening with just Ian. That's like the beginning of the entire track. That goes into really crazy proggy stuff that's all over the place. Really good organ work on here. You get the Poet and the Painter part. Things kind of calm down after that. Get a little more chill, but still very playful, with a lot of sort of callbacks from like to the earlier themes that popped up in prior to The Poet is the Painter. And then the second side, or the first side, ends with something called You Curl Your Toes in Fun, Childhood Heroes, and Stabs Instrumental. This has some nice piano energy in it, some more like straightforward pop rock, some really dramatic bass playing dropping in there, and kind of a nice dramatic ending with some really, really sick organ. Side 2 kind of echoes some of the themes from the beginning of side 1. Side 1, after we get the acoustic theme, goes into a part called See There a Son is Born. The beginning of this one is See There a Man is Born. We're playing with some of the same themes, some of the same energy, calling back to that. We get some really nice proggy parts, and then right before we go into a song called Clear White Circles, it almost feels like Entropy is kind of coming in, and things are starting to fall apart a little, and the band's trying to hold it together. But then when we get the Clear White Circles song, we get that acoustic energy, kind of harkens back to the intro a little bit. Then we go back into electric, and things kind of feel like they solidify back again, and we're kind of focused until the rest of the song. Legends and Believe in the Day is like a nice darker acoustic vibe, kind of somber, kind of seriously kind of builds the groove to a nice proggy peak. Tales of Your Life, just some really crazy, frantic, upbeat prog rock energy that's like just really kind of getting out all the last craziness that's been building up over the first like 40 minutes of the album. And then we reprise Childhood Heroes at the end. Some really good drum playing. Some really nice, just like tweaking of like a lot of the themes that have popped up throughout the first 40 minutes. And then we go back to the very beginning of the album to finish it out. If You're Thick as a Brick. And then we end it. This is a perfect journey. It's like, I almost wish, like, growing up, I had no choice but to listen to side A and side B in its entirety. I fear that now that we've released things in which it's been indexed, people are not going to do that. But these songs need to do that, because the accumulated effect of the entire song, each side being like 22, 23 minutes long, is fantastic. It's epic. They went out there to mock prog, and they put out one of the greatest prog rock albums ever. Yeah, that's my number one. Thick as a Brick. And that's what they look like in typewritten form. Like I said before, those top 7 from Minstrel in the Gallery up are all pretty epic albums. Like, you know, you're just picking nits to say one is better than the other. They're all ridiculously fantastic. And Jethro Tull really, like, who else? Nobody sounds like Jethro Tull. Their version of prog, like their version, the weirdness that they throw into the songs, their version of like jam, nobody does it. Nobody sounds like Jethro Tull. Absolutely fantastic. But all these albums are pretty good. But that's it. I'm not going to do the whole list now because this video is already really long. Let me know your thoughts on these albums. Got one more video, 2 more albums. I'll drop the final complete list in that next video of those 2 60s albums. But yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, share, comment, do all those things, and let me know your thoughts on 70s Jethro Tull. Did anybody have a better decade than Jethro Tull? Just like the consistency is ridiculous. All right, that's all I got. Peace. Thank you for watching. Talk to you later.